Hello and welcome to the WARC Podcast. My name's Alex Brownsell and I'm the head of content for WARC Media. Today we're hopefully going to be sharing something of an exclusive preview of some really important research that we think is set to shake up the media industry in the years to come. I've no doubt that today's guest on the podcast will be familiar to many of you, both for his research and also his growing prominence as a sort of vocal challenger of some of advertising's most sacred of cows. Felipe Thomaz is Associate Professor of Marketing at Saïd Business School, University of Oxford. He's also Deputy Director of the Oxford Future of Marketing Initiative and Director of the university's Diploma in Artificial Intelligence for Business. In short, a very busy man. Welcome, Felipe.
Hi, Alex. Thank you for having me.
Now, as I've just explained, you have a lot going on. So frankly, it's slightly hard to know exactly where to begin. But I thought we could set the scene with Beyond the Pair, which is a paper released late last year, exploring media archetypes, and I think which crucially questions the importance of optimizing campaigns for maximum reach. Could you give our listeners a bit of an overview of where that paper came from and how it came together?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick shout out to my co-author. So this is a very proud paper from the Oxford Future Marketing Initiative that was done with my colleagues, Professor Jason Bell and Professor Andrew Stephens. So it's kind of, it's not just my head. I'm the very vocal loudmouth about it. But it's also great because it's this all Oxford collaboration, which is, in academia, at least, it's not very common. Like you tend to collaborate with people across universities and so on. So it's kind of like really neat to have just everybody in the same hallway. So it's our joint baby. So the conversation around this started actually with Meta as one of the originators. And they're one of the research partners at Oxford. We work with them a lot. And discussions about concerns in how media operates, open questions that are keeping people awake, or issues in measurement, or issues in things that are causing really thorny problems. That's generally where that started. And they asked questions about cross effects. And that was just like a passing question for Meta. So they weren't necessarily involved in the research, but it was just kind of like their thing is really how much do we know about the interaction between channels? And I'll get to cross effects more precisely in a bit, but that was the challenge. And Kantar put their hands up and was like, oh, we measure stuff around this. So if you're going to go down this road, we can share data so you can answer the question. So just as a bit of background, like that's kind of how the Oxford team works, is we have this set of industry partners that just pose questions, and where there is a gap in understanding, so that the industry seems to be missing something, or they're really concerned about something, and we cannot find a reasonable answer in the scientific body of work in our literature, then to me, that's our perfect point of attack. It's just like, it's important and we don't know.
So the toughest of industry questions, they come to you because we don't have the answers off the shelf, basically.
Yeah. And let's be honest, like they have brilliant people working for them. It's not like the meta marketing science team is weak, right? Like they're brilliant people inside of there. But because they're also mid operations, they're running their business, they don't have the time to go and do the sort of work that I'm paid to do, right? Which is go solve a problem that is not an immediate thing, but it would help everybody move along. So that's that sort of thing. So we tend to be this external R&D sort of support for everybody, which is, again, the PhD role, right? Is the professor. I'm not concerned about one person's specific profit. I'm concerned about everybody's profit. So that's what that is. And then our partners also help us kind of get this done. So Kantar just provided the data so we can do the analysis, with everybody having the understanding that we're going to say whatever we find, whether it helps them or not. So that's the other caveat that they all sign into. So that was the origination. It's just like, okay, how do cross effects work? And looking through what we know about really the combination of channels, we saw a very, very troublesome kind of pattern in the scientific literature. All of the analysis was done on broadly what we call like dyadic relationships, so pairs of channels. So I understood that the viewability and the effectiveness of TV would change if somebody's actually cruising at the time Twitter. So they just examined that pair, and nothing else of the media ecosystem played into that function because we're just worried about pairs. And then we did lots of replications, studies, and so on, like as a academic body of various pairwise relationships, but nobody ever looked at everything at once, if that makes sense. There was nothing ever more complex than two things working together or not. And the only variable really that was considered tended to be sales. So it was a unidimensional on outcomes and kind of this dyadic sort of relationships on pairs of channels. And that gives us our angle of attack of just saying, actually, if we can solve so that, what happens if we change objective function, right? So if I'm not just driving sales, I'm driving awareness, I'm driving brand mindset metrics and sales, like, do I have different effects or is it always the same? And if I worry about cross effects and other things, does that change the story? The other components that we had to fight against is not meant to be a stronger word, but what we saw direction was the theory was collapsing cross effects with this idea of complementarity. So it had been shrinking to a construct that was being called synergy. Channels work well together. And then we started to make this argument that that oversimplifies and we lose control and power by just having that single measure of how well things gel, when we could have actually cross effects and complementarity as separate things. So this paper then evolved through those studies to say, let's develop a new way to account for what happens when we toss everything into the pot, not just two things, because media planning is not just two items at once and you hope for the best. So what happens if it's everything at once? Does that lead to a different story? Econometrically, mathematically, like it requires a different approach. So that was a new kind of contribution and idea thrown out of how to solve this problem.
Yeah, just to sort of emphasize that point, I think, and WARC, we've published a huge amount of research that looks at two things together. And it's something that the industry's done for a long time. And I assume that is just because to look in a more three-dimensional way is challenging and does require, new models to kind of come up with the way that the research can kind of be understood.
Yeah, it's frankly like it's a huge, complicated problem of, because if you're saying like, I'm going to explain a media plan, and let's say I have 11, we use this calculation in the paper just to highlight the issue. I have 11 channels I want to use, right? Or I have available to me for some reason. Now if you're a media planner, you recognize that's a small subset of things, touch points you have available to you. That's 2,047 different possible sets that you can create from that. So do you want to build a model with 2,047 kind of variables trying to explain the power of all, like it just, these things don't work and the data doesn't allow for that sort of analysis. So we had to, and this, a lot of Jason's work is just to create a system that allows for the analysis of this from a different perspective.
And the paper's fascinating, would highly recommend anyone on to read it. But one of the things you do is you pull together different archetypes of combinations of media and yeah, I guess how they work and where they work best and maybe don't work best. Are you able to kind of give a bit of an overview of how that works?
Yeah, so that was the solution to this problem specifically, right? So if we can't deal in pairs, we need to deal in more complex objects. So we could have said, like, let's look at triplets. That's still kind of low dimension compared to the size of the problem that we have. So if you want to think about a big giant space that we're kind of trying to map out, an archetype is a composition of channels that we see very often. And they're kind of, the reason why they're called archetypes is you try to use that language of archetypal sort of plans that do something different from all the other ones. So they're functionally different in what they deliver from the other ones. So they're, you can think of almost like a cluster. So they divide this membership cluster that says, yeah, in this domain, you're doing this sort of work. So they are a combination of channels that take into account all of the combinations or the specific combination of channels and the interaction between channels in both the dyadic, triplet, quad, and every kind of possible structure inside of that ball. And then what we use that as this kind of dispersed map, which is in the paper as well. We try to put it into a two-dimensional sort of structure so you can see how they're distant from each other. And then if you create, what that allows us to do, which I think is like a really cool methodological part of the paper, is we know you're not going to necessarily try to recreate those archetypes yourself. When you create a campaign and you make a choice, you're going to make your own decisions of what you're trying to do and what proportion you're using each channel. And that recipe that you create can be described as a blend of one or more archetypes. So you can think of it as a distant, if I'm on a map and I put myself on this map, and the map describes like this, let's pretend it was just two channels just to make it easy to visualize. You're an XY grid. So if you just put yourself on the map, this is what I'm choosing to do, you can see how close you are to one archetype and saying, I'm actually going to be doing a little bit of this type of work, but I'm not purely this archetype. I'm actually kind of close to this other one. So I'm doing a blend of A and B. And that gives you a sense of what the outcomes are going to be of this deployment of this sort of thing. And that gives you an ability to choose of actually, I need to do more of this sort of awareness work, which in my category might be archetype 6. So I need to start changing my recipe to walk myself closer to that archetype. And it allows a little bit more control while respecting the complexity of the space, that these things don't combine trivially. There's actually a lot of value in how they compose, right? One way that I've what this respects, and I think it's important just to get as those things in our heads that channels function, back to that cross effects and complementarity, right? So cross effects is this multiplicative sort of effect. So if you have, I'll keep using some examples I've used before because they work. So it's like if I have TV and I have outdoor, right? If they have a positive cross effect for TV, it might be that once I turn on outdoor, even though I'm not changing the budgets, the lift I'm going to get out of TV increases by mere presence of the outdoor being visible in the same environment, right? So that's a cross effect. But if I'm trying to achieve a goal, they have another dimension of working well together in complementarity, in that they each deliver a different benefit that drives the same goal. So you can think of it in like sports terms. It's if you're building a team and we're playing football, you don't use 11 goalies.
Yeah.
Right? Like your composition is wrong. Like, so you say, I need different players because at the moment I have a specific goal. Maybe I'm really, really far ahead. And so I need a higher defensive system. So I have more defenders. I still only am allowed to have one goalie. And you have those, right? So you change that architecture to defend your position. That's going to drive one sort of thing. And we do the same thing with media channels, recognizing that maybe that defenseman and that goalie actually work really well together. So they're cross effects and they perform better because they communicate and play well together. We see the same thing in media, different jobs that compose into different goals, which are mapped then to this archetype. So we can say, actually, these combinations are observed to deliver really abnormal good returns in very narrow fields. So think about what you're trying to do and place yourself there.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think, one of the things that we've seen in the last, 5-10 years was an acknowledgement that channels in combination have a beneficial effect. But it was fairly simplistic. It was just, sort of talking about channels in fairly interchangeable ways. But I guess what you're talking about is that the presence of different channels in a media plan and the addition of one here or taking one away there can have a fundamental impact on what you're going to achieve with that campaign.
Massively. And some of those combinations are, I've been talking in very positive terms. Some of those combinations are destructive. So the useful for an academic paper and for a warning is the worst performing combination is one that uses everything.
Wow.
So if you turn on all the lights, right, it's just like every dial goes up, everything goes down to 11. There's always a better alternative. So it's kind of like you can't simplify it to just, oh, fine, just do everything, boil the ocean, speak everywhere, be super loud, reach everybody. Like that is the worst performing combination of things. So that comes with a warning of like, you've crafted your recipe, right? You have your media plan, and then you go, oh, I have extra budget, I'm going to buy these other things. You've just changed what your thing is going to do. Like that's a meaningful decision. So scattershot, please don't.
Yeah, and I think what was really interesting in the paper is that at WARC, we're often asked, what's the optimal combination of channels? What's the optimum allocation share? You point out that there isn't one. It is totally dependent on all of the factors, including brand size, region, outcomes, all of this kind of stuff. You have to make choices.
Yeah. So it's good news, bad news, right? So I think everybody wants to, oh, please just tell me there's one thing I need to do, simplify this. And with due apologies, no, like the role of the manager, the role of the human, the role of the intelligence, this gives you one more degree of protection from, AI taking your job.
Yeah, it's good news for media planners everywhere.
Right. So as you're saying, like actually the contextual knowledge, which is going to, take a while for an automated system to kind of learn and evaluate and do those things. So yeah, like the human intelligence, that choice, which is not going to be made for you, is really, really important. The same plan will do massively different things for somebody else because of their context. And if you just abstract away, you're just going to be kind of rolling the die, like very often. And that was one of the other things that we were able to prove and show actually as a reaction to the review process, the reviewers that asked us to keep validating and do robustness checks. One of their challenges was, can you show us that this is not just media planning as it is? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, is this new? Does anybody care? Is there any value to this whatsoever? And that's where we did the study around reach sufficiency, right? Because this argument that we have is, for this paper to work, for this approach to work, for different recipes to work, it cannot all be simplifiable to a single DV, a dependent variable that says, well, if I just maximize reach, which is going to be one specific combination of channels that gives me that benefit, just delivers me all the outcomes that I want. So I don't need to worry about this complexity. It's just audience construction. And we found a complete separate set of behaviors we see of the 1,083 campaigns that we look at. We find all of them to be optimizing reach, essentially. Like there's 80% of those campaigns are essentially in the most efficient position of reach acquisition. And the distribution of outcomes is normally distributed around 2%. So it's kind of like really, really weak outcomes. So they're doing what they're told, which to me is the good news. Like, we're really good at doing what our jobs. Somebody has said, get me reach. God, like, you got reach. Like, right? Like if that's the KPI, it's delivered against. We're damn good at what we do. But to me, the problem is that dependency of what are you trying to do really? Like, your business is not moving because of reach. Your business is moving because of sales. Your business is moving because of some other choices. And those things are decoupled from that reach multiplier. So the way that we landed on is not to replace reach, because I think we all inherently recognize that you need to scale your efforts. And if you have the perfect campaign that just talks to one human being, you're going to have one point of influence, but not much more, right? So it's this dual optimization of what's the composition that gets me what I'm trying to achieve. And so imagine that if I say, you need, Alex, you need archetype 6. We didn't name them because we didn't want to be cute, but it's like there's a specific archetype, and that gets really close to whatever it is that your business is, your category, and what you're trying to achieve. The question is, but it doesn't optimize to reach, right? It just optimizes to the goal. The question is, how far away do you have to travel from that perfect position to start gaining reach? So as you move towards a reach optimum, you're traveling away from a goal optimum. And then you're playing that balancing game of how much do I want to trade off scale for, effect. And you're trying to find a sweet spot that both are as good as they get. But you don't go to a whole different recipe to get the best reach, because you're going to do the wrong thing at scale, and nobody wants that.
No, absolutely. Just to sort of pause for a moment, and obviously, you've challenged, I think, the sort of the sense of the fungibility of reach that channels, just swap them. It's all numbers. That is obviously going against some of the sort of orthodoxies that have come into media planning over the last 10, 15 years. If you don't mind me saying, when I'm not sure if anybody's ever pointed this out to you, when I went to Google your name a day or two ago, the first result that comes up is Felipe Thomaz, Byron Sharp, which...
Wow, did not know that. Okay.
How is the industry responding to what you're saying? Because we know how popular that thinking, that sort of reach kind of orientation has sort of become within the marketing industry. Are you sensing that some brands are starting to kind of understand that that might not be the best approach?
Yeah, so that's very broadly the reaction. So I have to be cautious, because I have to understand that whatever information I'm getting is probably going to be biased, right? People are going to come in. Normally, people will come to me and say, "I agree with you." Very few people come very few pitchforks in that sense, other than LinkedIn. LinkedIn likes pitchforks.
They do.
But when I go and I talk to CMOs, even those that previously had managed their businesses entirely on the basis of reach sufficiency, awareness, mental availability, and lack of differentiation, moving away from distinction or towards pure distinction rather than true differentiation. So closely aligned to that pre-existing bit that you mentioned. Invariably, every single one that I've talked to, again, recognizing the bias, right? Once we work through the logic, I show them the results, and sometimes even work through the models, because they say, previously these things have been validated internally. How am I seeing a different result now? The reaction is that from these top marketers in amazing, companies that we all know, is largely, yeah, that makes sense, and it matches what we're seeing, and it matches the direction of travel that we were on anyhow over the past, let's say, 10 years. This just gives it a name, it gives it controls, it gives us kind of more satisfaction that it's been proven across several. One difficulty that they have is they don't have all of the campaigns from all of their competitors, while I did. Right, so a single company only sees what they do and their returns. So it's really hard for them to step outside of that path dependency, because they're just looking at their single trajectory. So it really took this really gift to us from Kantar of here's everybody's media plans that we've tested, to see that actually there's huge variation in those outcomes and contexts and conditions. And that explained what some of the CMOs were seeing. Now, there's been pushback and pitchforks of I think there's weird behavior around idea loyalism. Because I don't want anybody to kind of start preaching my paper as if it's a Bible either. It's this is scientific help. I'm trying to get you to a better understanding of a complex environment, because simplifying it necessarily injects error in the system. You're reducing a complex space to a simpler space, and you're going to lose information along the way. It just turns out that we lost too much valuable information in going to this simplification. And some people just frankly just built careers and personal brands and things around I've been, dumping this book or this idea for so long, I cannot change my identity, professional or otherwise. So that comes out, but doesn't bother me.
Let's look forward now, because I think one of the really exciting things with the work that you're doing at the moment is that Beyond the Pair is just the start. a kind of multi-stage process where you're going to sort of start peeling back the layers and looking at actually how media works. And I believe that the next stage, where you're working with Wavemaker, Group M agency, is exploring how channels are evolving in terms of their ability to influence consumer behavior. Are you able to sort of give our listeners a bit of a sort of tease for what might be coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very excited about this whole trajectory of work, and it necessarily needs to be kind of a big body of work for me, at least, because no single study is going to answer every question, and it would be a terrible study if it did, because it's trying to again boil the ocean. So we need to kind of pick at specific parts to try to explain. So this original paper provides this complex view and says that, these channels are non-fungible. We need to respect individual differences and a tool on how to combine them for good outcomes. So that's great. And it disproves sufficiency of reach. So it has a pretty solid debunking of, I hate the word debunking, but just it disproves, it falsifies that hypothesis, if it ever existed, that all you need to do is this. Where it doesn't go far enough, because no paper should go, try to solve everything at once, is start showing why and how those channels are different and how they combine in different, right? I've shown that they're not the same. They're like, great, okay, now tell me which one is really great for me, what is the reason, what's the mechanism, what's the functional form of these channels, right? I'm just saying they're not the same, but I haven't given a lot of really satisfying answers of how's it work. So that's the next set, right? We're just starting looking at, can I start enumerating the ways in which they're different? Can I respect some of this complexity? So lucky then to have Wavemaker as one of the research partners at Oxford, and they had the data assets to allow me to play with this question. So they had like over 1 million consumer journeys with a verified purchase at the end that I have access to. Both looking at what they term like a priming stage, so more upper funnel, was setting the starting position that somebody will be in as they start a purchase journey, followed by a specific journey ending in a purchase with all of the channels going into it. So I'm analyzing. I've started an analysis on both of those processes, but I have results already from the activation stage. So actually getting somebody to pull the trigger and go and buy something, regardless of what their consideration set was and so on, which would be the follow-up that I'm going to be doing next. And because of the data structure and the sheer gift of 1 million confirmed purchases, right? What I was able to do is respect individual heterogeneity, which is people are different, right? Consumers are different. And we know this, and I could have abstracted it away and said, I have enough people that, it's just going to be some average person. But because of how this is structured, I can actually estimate an individual level propensity to react to stimulus. So I could be, maybe Felipe, super stubborn. And it doesn't matter how many TV ads I see or billboards or Facebook impressions. I just don't care. I am super stubborn, and I won't change my ordering of my consideration set. You cannot make me buy. You cannot make me change consideration. I'm just like really, really, really stubborn. And maybe somebody else is on the extreme end of that spectrum, and every signal is a fantastic new idea for them, right? So they see an ad for brand A and they're like, yes, brand A is the best. They see another impression for brand B and they immediately just go back, nope, brand B is right. That was much better. Obviously, those extremes are going to be very rare, but we're going to have some weird distribution, something that I don't know. So I was able to estimate that with the idea of saying, I need to account for, if I'm trying to explain the power of a channel to move people, I need to account for their initial propensity to be moved, right? So it's this internal game that I'm playing of updating, of saying, I have a journey, I have a sequence, and this person sees this 70 touch points. and I have an estimate in this data of how much work is done, or have they seen and have they not, to this purchase, which gives me an indication of what worked and what didn't. But then I purify it, qualify it based on their propensity to be influenced.
Are there any rules that you're seeing in terms of that propensity to be influenced in terms of demographics or affluence or anything like that?
Yeah, so on the data that I have, I was able to recover some of the stuff that we know. So the age effect is kind of interesting, right? So you, when you're super young, so pre-18, you tend to have very low ability to be influenced because you're not a decision maker. So it's just kind of like you're not the buyer, so you tend to just not have a lot of effect. But then as you go into, marketers' favorite age ranges, 18 to 35s, we see a growing and then towards decreasing effect of being influenced. So that group is much more likely to be influenced and starts decaying as they age. So as we move beyond 35, the values start to become negative and they become more entrenched into their views, positions, and decreases their overall likelihood of being shifted. And decomposing a person that is about, the age is about 21% of their overall kind of state and position. Gender is very non-informative. So I think it explains kind of about 3% of that. So I wouldn't plan my media around gender targeting. I don't think it shifts. And it's just kind of a natural effect, or just kind of a levels effect. There's no interaction. So there's no reason to kind of target on that. But what it leaves is about, let's say, 75% of that propensity being a individual level characteristic. So it's not relative to your age. It's not changing over time. It's just you as a human. The interesting then, the crazy fun bit, which again resonates with marketing experience. So it's pleasing in that way because it has like external face validity, like it's consistent with what we see, is that the average propensity, like this average score, is different across different categories. So it is actually, so if I'm in alcohol, for example, I'm selling drinks, alcoholic drinks, I am about one standard deviation higher in the score, meaning it's easier to influence somebody in that category than the average consumer in an average category, right? So one, if you're a marketer, that makes the environment really difficult to play with because, or everything sort of works. Every channel is more powerful for you in a sense because everybody's responding to every stimulus. That makes your defensive position really difficult because people are variety seeking, they're trying new drinks, they're buying other stuff. Every new thing becomes a possible alternative and everybody's reacting to everything. That also changes their valuation of media channels because everything seems to work really well. So you can buy on price, right? If you are in personal care, shampoos, facial creams, whatever it might be, you're kind of like one standard deviation below. It's much harder to shift somebody from their choices in that category than the average person in the average category. So again, it's a more defensive market. Once you have somebody, they're likely to stay. A new kind of introduction or a new stimulus, new media campaign is going to shift them very little or has a lower probability of shifting somebody. So that was one of those sort of insights. So that was interesting, and it kind of matches the lived experiences of marketers because you go like, why is my category annoying? This describes that rather well, right? Like it just does. Then the other thing that to me just changes the game a bit is channels are non-linear across that distribution, meaning that some channels are better than others at moving the people that are hard to move. Some channels are better at moving or not moving people that are easier to move. So you have this kind of S-shaped curve of, yeah, it's generally going to be more difficult to shift people that are hard to shift, but it's variable across channels, that power at that level. And if you go to an extreme for the people that are, I jokingly call them lemmings, right? Like the people that do whatever stimulus, they follow that stimulus. It doesn't matter what channel you use. They all have the same power because that person just, maybe I'll pick like on Meta as good friends, but like there's a subset of Meta customers that click on every ad, right? So if you're an ad clicker, it doesn't matter what the ad is, you're going to click on it because that's what your utility function is, clicking on things.
Marketing's favorite people.
Right? So they just like click through rate goes through the roof. But it's like, so if you have those people in the population, it doesn't matter what the channel is, they're going to engage, they're going to interact because it's part of their joy or whatever. So the differentiation in channel becomes really interesting because my market might be at a different concentration of personal behaviors and influence, like they're easy to shift or they're hard to shift. And the channels themselves are either better or worse depending on where you are in that distribution. So if you are a car manufacturer and I'm a steel producer, our valuation of each channel is going to be massively different. Right? And that just goes even further into that insufficiency of reach, right? Like they are functionally different. They're doing different things for different people in different contexts. And to me, my favorite part is creates huge arbitrage because I can buy tons of channels that do exceptional work for me in my category because they're priced for the average category, right? They're priced on no knowledge of this functional form. So there's tons of money on the table right now until the media owners start charging on the basis of this research. But for a while, I think that all of media buying can be done with better information of what this is actually going to do for you and not just the GRPs.
Yeah, there's bargains to be had if a channel is likely to shift consumers in your particular category, but maybe don't have the same effect, in other categories as well.
Yeah, so you can say like there's one category. I was walking through with somebody with the specifics for them, so I won't name categories and things, but just to highlight like very specific things. There were a couple sets of channels, and both of them were predicted to be very high in likelihood to influence somebody to pull the trigger and make a purchase. So this is conversion. So the likelihood of influencing conversion journeys was at 72% for one channel and 70% for the other. That's a very high number. So it was towards all those categories where people react to everything, right? Like it necessarily has to be. But the difference was that 2%. Okay. And so said, like, it's a choice. So that's the whole information you have to is 2%, you choose the 72% because it gives you a higher likelihood of purchase. And then the CMO is like, well, but that 72 is a 2 million buy minimum. And the 70 is about a 50K buy for my media plan. So functionally, you're getting this. So if there's nothing else happening and there's no other parts, like, so if I'm just narrow on this lens, the ROI on that cheap channel is enormous compared to that huge media buy that is doing 2%. Like the marginal benefit of the expensive one is just not there, right? Like 2% for like nearly 1.9 or 1.95 million more. You're just like, look, no. So is it doing something else? We can look at what it does in the composition. Is that going back to cross effects, complementarities, and so on? But just on its own, just trying to estimate its own individual power, we have these massive sort of arbitrage opportunities.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And there's such a huge number of different angles and talking points from the research you're doing. How is it all going to kind of come out? Is this going to be a big paper, or how are you going to be sort of releasing this into the world?
So it's going to be a sequence of things because academia tends to be on the slower side of things, and so is book, and so is all sorts of other things that could generate content. So it's as I get new findings, that are things that can be replicated and are stable, are robust, and things that I can then start sending out to the academic journals. I'll be sharing the white papers and disclosing those things. So I'm sure you and I will be having more conversations, and you can find stuff through WARC. But it's the way I like to think is like with this first initial paper, to me personally, it opened this media exploration door that I'm fully committed to. I'm fascinated by this environment, and I want to explain more about how it works in a more complex way. So if people are willing to put in the effort to move beyond simple heuristics, I want them to be rewarded with cash. So that's my aim. So to me, I've like this first paper created a tree, and now I need to start decorating it. I need to start explaining how these things work and under what conditions and so on. And that's going to be a trajectory and a process of discoveries. And every time there's a new discovery, I'll update, I'll share, we'll have podcasts, we'll share white papers, we'll do whatever it takes so people can find that information, because I'm trying to move this science, even as the world becomes more complex with the nature of the media environment, new channels entering or leaving, and like we're able to explain how they fit in and what their functions are. And I think that's important for all of us that are into this sort of stuff. So it's not going to be just one magnus opus that is just going to land and it's the new thing that you need to follow. Hopefully it's going to be a series of updates and guidances. And with each one is a new question as well. So that's why it's like pulling a thread. Like I open this and like, oh, now I need to explain that and that one. And it's just continuous. So the more that people engage with this and feedback of, I'd like to know this is important. Like those challenges are super valuable because it explains boundaries that I need to explain.
We're really excited by all of this work and you know, not to sort of get on my high horse for a moment, but I think as a company, as a publisher, we believe that decision making matters and evidence-based decision making matters in marketing. That's how you become more effective. And I think there has been a sense among certain players of the industry trying to encourage this sort of flattening, that nothing matters. You know, decisions don't matter. Just stick it in the machine, press go, bop, it's done. Decisions do matter and produce different outcomes. And I think, Felipe, your research is some of the best evidence we've seen so far that really is true. And it's good news for media planning at the end of the day that this isn't going to be automated out of existence.
Yeah, and I think I'm passionate about real marketing where, yes, choices are fundamental, strategy is competitive. So in a way, like I personally even necessarily don't need everybody to follow what I say, because you're just giving other people an opportunity to make more money, right? If you want to choose to simplify, by all means, just be aware that somebody that is not simplifying, that can handle more complexity, more understanding, and engage with this more completely, is just going to perform better. And over time, they're just going to be rewarded for it. So I don't have a need for everybody to just follow the letter of the law or, right? Like, it's not that. We're trying to give people tools, techniques, and understanding so they do the right thing for themselves. Everything else just play from that. And that's the beauty of a competitive marketplace.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating. I could have kept asking you more questions, but we'll leave it there for now. There's a summary available of the Beyond the Pair paper on the WARC website, and you can go, and I would encourage you to go and read the full thing as well, because it's absolutely fascinating, and lots more to come. I've no doubt we'll be speaking again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for showcasing the paper. I'm incredibly proud. I think it's one of the most important papers I've ever published. And I can't wait to just keep causing more trouble.
Absolutely. We look forward to hearing it as well. Well, that's all we have time for today. Unfortunately, if you like what you've heard, please do follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you really liked it, please do leave us a review. Until next time, thanks for listening.